We don't serve people who have beards like you." The manager's cutting words rang out, following the staff's awkward stares and cold rejections, left JD Vance stunned when he walked into Prestige Motors with the confidence of a political heavyweight. The room froze. Two officers watched in disbelief and JD stormed out without a word. But the fire in his eyes promised a reckoning, and what happened next turned the dealership upside down, delivering a lesson so powerful it left everyone ashamed, and you'll be on the edge of your seat to see how it unfolds. On a brisk March afternoon in 2025, an unsettling hush settled over Prestige Motors, a high-end car dealership on the edge of Washington, D.C., as JD Vance, a prominent political figure with a striking beard, stepped through the glass doors. His boots echoed on the polished floor, drawing every eye in the room. Salesmen froze mid-pitch, their gazes shifting to him with awkward, almost hostile stares. A receptionist fumbled her pen, her eyes lingering on his beard before darting away. Two police officers near the entrance exchanged a glance, their hands resting lightly on their belts, sensing the brewing tension. JD approached a salesman near a sleek black sedan, the man's name tag reading Mark. "Excuse me," JD said, his voice calm but firm. "Yes, sir, how may I help you?" Mark replied, but as his eyes met JD's and took in the beard, his expression twisted into discomfort. "Sorry, I have to guide that other customer," he stammered, gesturing toward an empty corner before scurrying off. JD stood rooted, a wave of confusion washing over him, his brow furrowing. Why was this happening? Undeterred, JD turned to another salesman, Ethan, who was polishing a car's hood. "Hey, I need some help here," JD called, his tone edged with frustration. Ethan glanced up, but the moment he saw JD, his face mirrored Mark's unease. Sorry, I've got something to handle," he muttered, his eyes flickering to JD's beard before he turned away, leaving JD isolated once more. The room seemed to close in, the silence growing oppressive as staff avoided his gaze, their movements stiff and evasive. JD's frustration surged. He spotted the dealership manager, Evelyn Carter, across the showroom, her sharp silhouette disappearing into an office at the back. "Hey, manager!" JD shouted, striding after her. "I need a word." Evelyn didn't pause, her heels clicking as she slipped through the door. JD followed, his pulse racing, and stepped into the office just as she turned. "Why isn't your staff dealing with me?" he demanded, his voice tight with anger. "I've been ignored by two salesmen. What's going on?" Evelyn's lips curled into a sneer, her eyes cold as she assessed him. JD braced for a reprimand, an apology, anything, but instead she brushed past him and flung open the office door. "Everyone, gather around," she barked. The staff shuffled into a semicircle near the office, their faces a mix of curiosity and dread. The police officers edged closer, their radios crackling faintly. Evelyn turned to her team, her voice laced with venom. "Tell this bearded guy why we don't serve him," she commanded. The room plunged into a suffocating silence, the weight of her words pressing down like a storm. Mark, the first salesman, broke the quiet, his voice quivering. "You want to know why we don't serve you?" he said, his eyes fixed on JD. Ethan stepped forward, his tone bolder. "Listen, we don't serve people who have beards like you." The staff joined in, their voices rising in a unified rejection. JD's breath caught, the insult striking like a blow. The officers tensed, their hands twitching toward their belts as the tension coiled tighter. JD's shock rooted him to the spot, his mind racing for a response. But instead of firing back, he turned on his heel, his face a mask of controlled fury, and walked out in silence. The door swung shut behind him, leaving the room in a stunned hush. Evelyn smirked, believing she'd won, while the staff exchanged uneasy glances. The officers shook their heads, muttering to each other, as the dealership returned to its uneasy rhythm. Outside, JD slid into his car, his hands gripping the wheel, his mind churning with the humiliation he'd just endured. What happened next shocked everyone. 2 days later, a fleet of black SUVs roared up to Prestige Motors, their engines growling like a warning. Men in suits emerged, carrying legal documents stamped with the seal of a major corporate entity. They stormed into the dealership, bypassing the stunned staff, and confronted Evelyn in her office. "By order of the board," one announced, his voice icy, "this dealership's parent company has been acquired. You're relieved of your duties. effective immediately. Evelyn's face drained of color. Her protests drowned out as security escorted her out, her belongings dumped into a box. The staff gaped as the news spread. JD Vance, leveraging his political connections and a covert investment strategy, had orchestrated a hostile takeover of the entire chain. JD returned the next morning, the documents in hand, his presence commanding the room. The staff gathered, their eyes wide with a mix of fear and anticipation. Evelyn, now a former manager, lingered at the back, her arms crossed defiantly. JD stood before them, his beard framing a face set with resolve, and began to speak. "You all judged me by my beard," he said, his voice steady but carrying a weight that silenced the room. "You turned me away because of how I look, not who I am. That's a mistake I've seen destroy lives, families torn apart, opportunities lost, all because people couldn't see past the surface." He paused, letting the words sink in, his gaze sweeping over each face. "I could fire every one of you for what happened, but I won't. Instead, I'm giving you a lesson that will last your lifetime. This dealership was built on exclusion, and you carried that torch when you rejected me. But here's the truth. Every person who walks through those doors deserves respect, not judgment. If you let prejudice guide you, you'll lose more than a sale. You'll lose your humanity. I've fought battles where people's worth was measured by things they couldn't change, and I won't let that poison this place. From now on, you serve everyone, no exceptions. Carry that lesson or carry the shame of this day." The room fell into a heavy silence, the staff's faces flushing with shame as the weight of their actions hit them. Mark lowered his head, his earlier bravado gone. Ethan shifted uncomfortably, his eyes avoiding JD's. Even Evelyn's sneer faltered, her defiance crumbling as the truth of his words pierced her pride. The officers nodded slowly, their respect for JD growing. The staff exchanged guilty glances, the lesson sinking deep, a lasting mark on their consciences. JD set the documents on a table, the takeover official, and turned to leave, leaving them to grapple with the shame and the wisdom he'd imparted. Judging others based on appearance can lead to your own downfall. Treat everyone with respect or face the consequences of your prejudice. The story illustrates how the car dealership staff, led by manager Evelyn Carter, judged JD Vance solely on his beard, dismissing him with mockery and refusing service. Their superficial judgment blinded them to his true worth and capabilities, leading to their humiliation when JD orchestrated a takeover and exposed their bias. JD's response, acquiring the dealership and teaching the staff a lesson about inclusion, underscores the importance of treating everyone with respect, regardless of appearance. His words, "Every person who walks through those doors deserves respect, not judgment," highlight the moral imperative to look beyond surface-level traits. The staff's shame at the end of the story serves as a warning. Prejudice can cost you more than just a sale. It can cost your integrity, reputation, and position. Evelyn's removal and the staff's regret reinforce this lesson, showing that fairness is not just a virtue, but a necessity.